Welcome back to the Monochrome Podcast. We're so excited to have you here for episode 14. If you are new listening to this episode, welcome. This is a podcast specifically for those who work in their local church, for those who make Sunday happen. This is a podcast for you. We are here with JT, Kailey, and myself, Caitlin. We're all part of the SALT team. And I got to start off asking a super important question. JT, Kailey, if you had a personal service drone, what would you employ it to do? I know this is going to affect you all day, this answer. For me, I want a service drone that could fly me around places so I don't have to drive or be in a vehicle. I don't like cars. So for me, I want a drone that flies me around.
I love it. Well, I probably wouldn't have a service drone because I don't like AI or robots. But if I did, it would do my laundry.
Ooh,
That's funny.
That's a good one.
That's actually a good one.
The never-ending chore.
Yeah. If I had a drone, it would 100% be for chores. So probably mowing. There are mowing drones. I would pay big money for one of those because mowing is my least favorite activity in the whole world. So.
And you're not talking just a Roomba that does your grass, but a flying drone that mows your grass?
Well, no, they have Roombas that will mow your grass. Yeah.
Still, that's crazy. JT hates lawn work. All right. Well, JT, take us off talking about AI. We know Kailey might hate it, but you've got some news in the AI world, right?
Yeah. So this is, I wouldn't consider it big news, but I think it kind of sparked an interesting thought in my head that I just want to bring to everyone's attention. So the article is, it's from The Verge, and it's about Adobe Lightroom getting a magic eraser. So anyone who uses Photoshop or I think even Canva and some of those different tools have this. Photoshop Express, maybe, those sorts of tools. There's been a magic eraser or generative fill or something of this nature for quite a while now, and it's gotten more impressive as time has gone on. And so they've added it into using generative AI into Lightroom, which a lot of people who maybe don't get into the technicalities of Photoshop or Illustrator or those sorts of things will just use Lightroom for photo editing or simpler tasks. It also has some features where you can quickly apply things to a large group of photos. So, but this kind of sparked in me a thought of are we getting to a point to where a lot of these tools are going to become just kind of one tool? You have a lot of crossover now, especially with this AI stuff, where there's a lot of similar tools on specifically thinking about the Photoshop platforms and the Adobe platforms. And so are we getting to a point now to where with AI and with the intuitiveness that's needed for these kinds of things, do we think that it's all going to be simplified down to one photo editing tool, one video editing tool, and maybe one 3D or graphics or animation tool? I'm curious if you guys think that's the direction things will head ultimately, or and if you think that's a good thing or not.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of these tools that you're explaining started simple and they got more and more complicated because everyone wants a background remover, like what you're talking about, an eraser like that. Everybody wants the filters, everything became so social media driven that once you learned the basic tool, everyone wanted that and that's what they knew. And so they kept adding these features to those programs that now they're all so complicated. I don't know, honestly, if they'll split up like what you're talking about and they'll end up being separate programs that do separate things, or if they'll stay muddled and overlapping simply because people don't want to go learn a new program. If they were to change things and split it up, where Photoshop is once again the detailed, super more professional Photoshop tool it used to be, and Lightroom was the simple, let's just change your lighting and some filters. If they went back to that sort of model where things are simplified, I just don't know if people would make the effort or spend the money for each of those programs to do each of those things.
No, but I actually agree with Caitlin. I use Lightroom at least once a week. I do photography outside of what I do at SALT. And I just don't know if, for me personally, I also am using Lightroom as a lazy way to edit because I don't love getting into the technicalities of Photoshop most days. And for the photography that I do, like I don't need it a ton. Like I'm really just color correcting, color grading, cropping. And so I don't know, I think maybe some of the geared like techie photographers and videographers would probably be like, yeah, let me learn this new platform. But I think for your church volunteer, your church staff member, they probably wouldn't want to.
Yeah. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of commitment to try to learn it new again. It's better to just build off of what you know.
You're saying if hypothetically there was like Adobe went to like a less tools, like you don't have all the separations now. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's interesting because you have something like Canva that exists, which is not currently on par with Adobe tools, but has kind of that like homogeneous, like kind of does all the things in the same platform, kind of does some video editing, does some photo editing, you know, if you pay for it, can do a little bit of animation stuff, nothing too crazy, but kind of all built in. So I'm curious if that's like what people want, or if that's like just really overwhelming and you're like, I just really want to edit some photos. I don't want to mess with all that other stuff.
Just keep it simple. Yeah. Well, and it's funny that you brought this up for like the news of the day, because I think in a big way, we're seeing a lot of people feel this, that everything has gotten so complicated and we're wanting to dumb things down again.
Speaking of which, we just actually at the time recording yesterday recorded our second episode of The Road to Salt for the second series with Brad Zimmerman. And it was all about AI and generating audio and video and voice with AI. And it was kind of mind-blowing. And it was less about like how scary it is, but about how like super useful and practical it is. I like immediately wanted to go start making like ads and stuff with it, or a video or something about salt. So it was really eye-opening about how powerful these tools are. And so you should definitely go check it out if you're wanting to figure out kind of how to make your workflow a little faster. So
in that vein, I will say I love that he used programs and examples that almost talk about what we're saying here. Is a lot of these AI tools that he shows us how to use, they do just AI for audio, just AI for graphics, just AI for video. Specific. And so it does start basic and simple. And that's what I love. If you're going to jump on that AI train, which, you know, you're either jumping on or you're getting left behind, he was very clear on where some great places are that you can start.
I guess I'm getting left behind.
No offense to Kailey. No offense to Kailey. You should watch the webinar though, because he has great advice about that.
Well, thankfully I have the replay and can't watch it.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. If you buy the whole season, you get the replays.
So Kailey, you found something that is on the whole other side of this conversation. A product, I don't want to spoil it, I want you to tell us about it, but a product that takes this the opposite direction, which is just as exciting.
Yeah, no, I am very excited about what is in my cart. And it's been in my cart for a minute, and I'll tell you guys why, because it's currently back ordered because it's actually gotten so popular. But there is a new trend we're seeing that is a non-screen digital camera, which sounds like an oxymoron probably to a lot of people, especially with the iPhone.
Yeah.
But I have a camera in my cart called the Camp Photo. I'm not really sure what they call it. But it's a $65 camera. And the people who created it for their kids. They wanted their kids to be able to capture memories at camp or on vacation without being glued to another screen. And what I think is so cool is the specs are actually really great. Yesterday, when I presented this, the team started looking at the specs and they're actually incredible. One thing that gets me really excited, well, I guess two things about this is, one, it feels and looks like a 35 millimeter film camera, but I can almost get that instant gratification of having the digital SD card. And it has Fujifilm rolled out film presets in some of their cameras. And this also does the same thing. It's not recipes like Fujifilm because you can go in and like calibrate it. But this is like your sepia, your black and white. But I just want to know you guys' thoughts on this. You know, I am anti-AI. So for me, it feels like getting back to basics, living the simple life, like Pearson Nicole Richie. But I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. It reminds me so much of the dumb phone. You know, I remember when the light phone came out, if you guys have heard of that, it's basically a smartphone that's super dumb. Like it has the features that you might want, but it takes away all the extra apps, all the social media. Like it is phone, text, maybe email, but even then it's super simplified. But everyone blew up about the light phone, about how we are trying to dumb down all these smart devices. And this, I feel like this is it for the camera. Like you have found the dumb camera that still has super good quality, that isn't all retro film, which is a really cool look, but you know, you're getting, like you said, that instant gratification with the SD card while having a very super basic physical body, which you were telling us yesterday, and I think you just said it, like it helps us stay in the moment, which is huge when it comes to cameras these days.
Yeah, I think even when I'm using like my phone camera, like just getting a video of my daughter or something like that, you end up like staring at your camera and that screen and you like miss the moment. And so I love this because it's really just like a, hey, I'm going to take the snapshot and then that's it. Like you move on, almost kind of like a Insta camera, only instead of only getting, or like a disposable camera, but instead of only getting 10 pictures, you get, you know, however many the SD card can hold. I love this too, because I think kind of what we're talking about as well in general is like using technology really intentionally. So kind of the tendencies to have all these bells and whistles and everything, and that can be nice for certain applications, but also like it's overwhelming and there's too many tools and too many buttons, and then you end up spending too much time messing with it or being distracted by it rather than just using it for what you want to use it for, which is just capturing a quick moment. Maybe you're not a professional photographer or you just want some candid pictures of things or whatever. You just want to remember it. And then this kind of takes away some of the distraction that other things might have or obstacles. And it really just makes you use the technology really intentionally. And it's still a great piece of technology, but it's also more affordable, which is super awesome. So I like it. It's now in my cart, and I would really like to get one.
So it's called Camp Snap, but the website is campsnapphotos.com. But you can go to the show notes and look it up. Yep.
That's why I was confused.
It is cheaper, more affordable. It's awesome. You will have to wait for it. That's the only caveat. You just have to wait because everyone wants one right now. And hopefully coming soon, it'll be in salt orange.
We hope so. Camp Snap Photoshop, lovely camera. If you're watching this, listening to this,
keep adding
we would
things.
love it in salt
Please
orange.
sponsor.
And please sponsor us. We will use it. But I really think, to wrap this up, I think in the church world, I am on my media team. And what this could be so cool for, they're $65. I don't know if I mentioned that. But it could be cool for like your youth camps, your worship nights, your Sunday mornings, where you can hand it to a team member. You can hand it to a pastor who's never used a camera before and say like, we want your point of view. And what I was telling the SALT team yesterday is like,
ooh, yeah,
I would love for us to get this all for conference and do it like from Caitlin's point of view, from JT's point of view, from my point of view. And that way it's so easy, cost affordable. And yeah, I think it's cool.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm into it. Buy these cameras and sponsor us.
Just imagine how good your executive pastor will feel when you come to him with a proposal for a new camera and it's not thousands of dollars, it's $65. That's like instant approval, guys. That's petty cash for the church, right?
Right.
We hope.
L-Acoustics, a leader in audio technology, offers cutting-edge sound solutions for houses of worship. Their Elisa immersive hyper-real sound transports congregations beyond the ordinary with an immersive soundscape, putting everyone inside the message. From cozy to grand-scale sanctuaries, L-Acoustics tailors sound designs to meet your specific congregation or worship space, ensuring quality meets affordability. With L-Acoustics, you'll never have to sacrifice sound quality. Learn more by clicking the link in the show notes.
We had an awesome opportunity to sit down with Jon Thurlow and talk with him about his skill set and the gifts that he brings to the church. Jon is a songwriter. He's been a worship leader. He has written music with many others, songs you've probably heard of. And we want you to take a listen to this awesome conversation that he was able to have with us.
Thanks, Caitlin. I am so excited for this next interview, even just getting a chance to get to know Jon here on this sort of pre-call as we're kind of sharing stories, working out some of the tech stuff. Just excited for our community to hear your heart, your passion, and your love for both the local church and worship leaders. Jon Thurlow, welcome to the Monochrome Podcast. How are you, my friend?
Thanks, Luke. Good to be here. Doing good.
I love it. Give just like a quick synopsis of sort of your history and ministry. I know you spent a long time on church staff, and kind of give us a little bit of a sense of kind of that quick synopsis into what you're doing today.
Absolutely, yeah. So pretty much out of college, just got involved with the church and was leading regularly for years, working with singers, musicians, tech, even though that's not my lane, but just lots of experience over the years. And, I would say for a good 15, 16, 17 year period, that was my world, just worship leading. That was my full-time, vocation. And then in 2019, as I was transitioning out of that, it began to dawn on me, or really hit me, that the amount of time, the intensity, it was unique. In other words, just lots of hours logged in of live worship leading, working with the musicians, working with the singers, working with leading a room. And while I don't consider myself a teacher or even really a coach in some ways, the idea that the idea of that next generation of worship leaders coming up, it's like, okay, I care about that. I care about taking whatever I've learned and passing that along to the next generation. And so that really prompted me to begin creating just basic content and material for worship leaders. I started like a 3-month group coaching for worship leaders, and that's what I'm still doing. I mean, that was, it's been almost 4 years of that. And we've had, over probably close to 250 students from all over the globe just be part of that. So that's kind of
that's incredible.
A little nutshell.
I love that you're just pouring back into the next generation. As you kind of reflect back on all those years in ministry, I know you had a chance to songwrite a little bit with some names that we may recognize today: Bethel, Maverick City Music. I want to maybe take just a quick second here and dive into that process just for a snapshot. What does that process look like when it comes to songwriting? Does it start with a specific idea? I mean, when you were doing co-writes, was it mostly co-writes or was it mostly individual? Walk through that process of songwriting.
Yeah. So there's two formats that when I think of it, really, I think of, you're either co-writing, like in a group, some sort of a group setting, or you're solo writing. I've spent time doing both. And there's pros and cons to both, so to speak, or unique challenges for each one. But the co-writing is a blast, lots of fun. The key with co-writing, though, is just holding your ideas loosely with an open hand, and that requires humility. That requires patience, and just taking just a more laid back approach. Like you have to go into a co-write just wide open and open to whatever direction your idea might go. And I think when you begin to write with other writers consistently, you'll start to find some chemistry, and you'll start to get into a flow. And, it's just going to vary, certain individuals and based on their own, just kind of how they're wired and their own experience as writers might jive really well. And then other times it's like, it's not as much of a fit. And so it's a process. It's a discovery, it's learning, it's growing.
I can imagine if you're walking into a songwriting room for the first time with someone you don't know, there's probably a lot of anxiety, right?
Yes.
John, put me in those shoes of like, you're in the songwriting room. Maybe it's a specific song. I don't know if you want to go back to sort of a specific moment, but I mean, who speaks first, right? Like, is there a little bit of like you're kind of more of the songwriter than I am, or I got a couple more cuts, or like, are you always kind of, jiving a little bit to go, who starts with, okay, well, here's this thing the Lord gave me, you know?
It really, I mean, you're painting the picture very well. I mean, you're walking in and you're really even just figuring out like, well, okay, who should kind of be the point person? Should we have a point person? Maybe we'll just, like just trying to figure stuff out. And I think with a setting like that, just, again, holding everything with a really open hand in terms of how we're going to craft. It's like, okay, do we start on an instrument? Do we toss around some lyrical concepts? Like, what's been on your heart lately? Like, what's the Lord highlighting to you, in the Word these days? Like, whatever. Like, you're just starting blank and just trying to, I think, encourage each other, validate each other's ideas. Just avoid like any language that's gonna, whether it's conscious or not, but kind of subtly slam. You're not thinking that, but you have to just be careful with how you're like, hey, that's a cool idea. What if we tried this instead? Instead of like, in your mind, you're like, yeah. I think that's a really strange idea. I have no idea why they're thinking that.
But I'm sure you've thought it. I'm sure everyone's thought it in those writing rooms. Right?
You're like, okay, cool. Maybe that's for later. But it's people skills. It's just learning to work with people and just empathy, humility, compassion, like all just the fruits of the Spirit. You're having to pull in that live in the moment. And
so crazy. I am not a songwriter, and I can not fully put myself in those shoes, but I can imagine there's a weight. There's a opportunity and sort of responsibility in those rooms to go, how do we craft something that would be honoring to the Lord, but also help people connect with their Creator, right?
Absolutely.
So cool. One of the things that you and I got to talking about before we got started, which was really encouraging to me, was kind of some of the things that you're stepping into right now as you're doing these coaching, this cohorts. And you said it so succinctly. You just said, I really want to help people make sure or help sort of align the relationship they have with Jesus off stage to the relationship that they have sort of with Jesus on stage, to use that sort of in quotes. I want you to maybe unpack that just a little bit more for our community, and what does that mean to a worship leader? Why is that so important to you as you're walking, shepherding worship leaders?
Yeah, I think we almost kind of have to backtrack and get back to like just the essence of worship. Like what are we doing when we worship? Like what's happening? And putting myself back like to my own just early years, starting to walk with the Lord. I think about like 10, 12, 14 years old, showing up to the youth group. And in my mind, it's just kind of like, well, this is when we sing. This is the part of the service where we sing. And then we'll hear a message or something. And so you just think you're just kind of singing the songs. And but there's so much more potentially. I mean, there is more going on, but there's more for us to be aware of, I think. And that's the idea that worship is more than a song list. Worship is a response to a person.
So good.
It's almost like you really can't even start with worship. The worship is a response to something. What's the thing? Obviously, it's Jesus. But like practically, like what does it? Like what does that mean? I think it actually gets back to, to use some biblical language, like beholding, like beholding Jesus. We don't use that term. Like I'm going to behold. Like that's a kind of an archaic word. But when I think of that, like beholding the Lord, responding with worship. Okay, what does it mean to behold? I think of a couple things. Like practically, it means like taking the eyes of your heart and picturing the Lord. Like we have biblical descriptions of the Father, of the Son. I mean, Revelation 4 and 5, Revelation 1, Daniel 7, Exodus in the 20s and 30s, Isaiah 6. Like Ezekiel 1, there are passages in Scripture that give description. And like, what if we took some of those biblical passages and actually began to, like, again, taking the eyes of our heart, like we're starting to picture that throne room. We're starting to picture that scene. So that's just one practical way. But then, I also think of beholding almost on a more relational level, like you're actually getting to know someone, like you're getting to know their story. And Jesus has a story, from Genesis to Revelation. Like, how well do I know his story? Because it's his story that's going to tell me it's going to give me information about him, like what he's like, how he functions, the things that he loves, the things that he hates, the things that make him excited, the vision that he has. All of that, like, is available to me if I will take the time to actually sit at his feet, open up the word, and behold him, so to speak. So I know I'm giving a super long-winded explanation here, but again, I'm thinking like worship is about beholding Jesus. There's layers and levels to that. Are we taking the time as worship leaders to behold, so that when we're actually worshiping just in our own devotional lives, but then also on stage, like what are we responding to? Like the songs are supposed to be avenues or doorways to connect with him, to behold him, to, as I think it's Psalm 29, like to ascribe worth, ascribe to the Lord the glory that's due his name. So yeah, I feel like I'm kind of rambling a little bit here, but the idea is, again, like, what are we doing off stage to behold Jesus, so that when we're leading worship on stage, it's like we are pulling on that, that history that we're developing with him, and I guess where I'm really going with that is so that the worship coming from us is an authentic worship.
100%, yeah.
No,
I think there's so much there. I'll never forget being at a worship conference, and Israel Houghton was sort of teaching, and he was talking about this idea of, do you worship on your own? Do you just go sit on a piano and lead yourself in worship, or is worship just leading songs? And I think you're tapping into that same heartbeat of, is this thing, are you able to sort of lead people to a Jesus you genuinely know off stage, or are you just singing songs to hope to lead Jesus to this this Jesus that you hope to know someday,
Right.
I mean, that's so good. So, I mean, walk me through what does that look like and how it affects, I hate to go too practical because this is such a deep, philosophical sort of concept to wrap our heads around, but there's a part of me that goes, this has to help engagement in the church.
Yes.
When it comes to singing songs. Walk me through that. How does this transpose to a more engaged community?
Yes. Okay, so I think, a few different thoughts, but let's just start with the worship leader. The room, whether the room is fully conscious of it or not, I think they can, to some extent, sense authenticity. The worship leader sets the tone for the room. If the worship leader at the heart level is themselves, if they are worshiping, again, there's not an exact percentage for whatever formula, but to some extent, the room, I think, feels that. They can sense that. And I think that serves almost as like like a magnet, where it's like, if I'm in the room and I can sense that what's happening on stage is real, like is genuine, it's almost kind of like a reminder for me. It's like, what am I doing? Am I just singing the songs, or am I actually like singing to Jesus? Because I think they are, and like that's the vibe that I'm getting. Like, this isn't like a show. Something is happening up there.
I get to join them with this.
Yes, exactly. And so I think, from a worship leader standpoint, I think that's where it starts. And that also, let's just talk about this for a second. Like, just that impacts the team. Like, as a musician or a singer on the team, when my worship leader is, entering in, so to speak, like if they are, perceivably, like it's like, wow, they're going there. Like, they're worshiping at the heart level. It's a prompt to me of like, okay, am I just playing my instrument, or am I just behind my mic singing, or am I jumping in too? Like, there's something going on. I want to be a part of this. So that I think of that, but then I also think of the room. I feel a lot when it comes to the room, and I think Jesus feels a lot. To use kind of like the broader biblical term of like the people, when you see the people, that term in the Old Testament, in the New Testament some, but I'm thinking more Old Testament, the idea of like their sheep without a shepherd, or their law. The Lord is very invested in the people. He cares deeply about the people. And so the people that we lead every Sunday, he feels the same way. Like he cares about them. He's very obviously attuned to their stories, their journeys, the fact that for some of them they barely made it to church today, and they're just like all of that. And so I think I'm going to step out a little bit on a limb here with this, Luke, but I feel like we have an opportunity as worship leaders to educate. Feels like too cold of a word. Share, I don't know. Just talk about worship with our congregations. What if we as worship leaders took a few minutes before a time of worship, or after, somewhere in the service, and sure, it could be the lead pastor instead, but I think there's something about a worship leader talking about it, where they're just reminding the room, just sharing a little bit, guys, just, kind of pointing us back to the essence of what we're doing. And you talk, you communicate, like, here's what we're doing when we worship. Here's the opportunity in front of us. Jesus is present to us. Are we fully present to him? As we're singing the songs, just talking about it. I think a little bit of that would go a long way in terms of helping the room to engage. That's again, it's like I feel like I'm stepping out on a limb and saying that, because it feels like a
well. Have you ever seen
idea.
teams do this, like in nights of worship or a Bible study, or something that's not even Sunday morning, right? But you're sort of enlightening or sort of engaging conversation around, let's discuss worship. I think a night of worship, what a great way to sort of really try and break this down and make it more. We're not just singing songs, guys.
Totally. Yeah, I think even like having a little bit of a, like a different day time in the calendar, where it's not just kind of like, Sunday morning corporate worship, kind of our rhythm routine, like get us out of that a little bit. Let's do a night of worship, something a little bit of a different context. It's I think a perfect environment to just dig a little bit deeper.
So we're talking here, John, about this idea of heart is greater than art, right? That the heart that you carry as a worship leader in front of your community as you shepherd your people in worship services week in, week out is really more important in some regards. I feel like that's what you're saying, than the art that you have, the skill. I think of Samson in Scripture,
right?
That it says over and over and over he was a very skilled at what he did, but it wasn't his skill that got him in trouble. It was his heart, right? It was his character that ultimately was the downfall. And yet I think there's a lot of tension in the church. And I think, even here at SALT, we probably have a lot of tendencies to sort of naturally say, hey, we just want to help your skill as a worship leader. We want to help you with transitions, and we want to help you with vocals or, songs or service planning, whatever. I love this conversation because it's all about the heart. How do you help coach a worship leader in that tension? Because the senior leadership may understand and value heart, but they're going to put resources, finances, time maybe around skill development. How do you encourage someone to kind of keep accountable to that?
Right. It's the good news, I think, even with this topic, is that it's not either or. You don't have to choose. You can do both. I think you should do both. I think it's biblical to do both. Think about just for a second here, like the Lord didn't randomly just pick whoever when they're building the temple. No, he builds the people, or he pulls on the people that they have the skill. So the Lord cares about this.
Bezalel and Ola.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, and for the singers, like the whole deal. And so that whole idea of excellence is a biblical idea. And, I think when we do think about the sacredness of what's happening when we worship, what's it riding on? It's riding on the music. So we do want the music to be well done. We do want it to. We do want to put forth our best. We do care about skill development and training. There's a place for that. So again, we don't have to suspend one to just focus on the other. It's like, no, let's do both at the same time. I do think, maybe it's just human nature or even just cultural where we're at, in our, just with technology, whatever. Like it can be easy to rely on our gifting, our ability, our skill. So that's something to be aware of. But like when I'm meeting on these group calls with these various worship leaders, it's like we're talking about both. Like, how do we help our teams go deeper and dig deeper in the Lord off stage? And how do we help them lock in and commit to personal practice? No, take 30 minutes a day and sit with your bass and your amp and 5 days a week. Take it seriously. Do it. All that stuff. So when I'm coaching them, I'm coaching them with both. But I think of maybe this is a helpful way to think about it. The core, what's the operating system, so to speak. It's going to be. I think it should be the heart. What's the place that it's coming out of? I think of the skill as it's the skill should be the extensions. It's what's the core OS? It's what we're cultivating with Jesus off stage in the secret place.
Well, and what I hear you saying is skill is only going to engage an audience so much. I mean,
totally.
At some point, heart is going to be that thing that if you just feel like your community is not engaging, are they seeing your heart? Are they seeing this authentic fire burning for the Lord, and they want to come to that fire and sit by it and experience that same warmth and get ignited because of that, right?
Totally.
And I mean, I love that. Now, we talked about this as a conference actually years ago when we actually really sort of explored this idea of biblical excellence, and we sort of came up with this phrase that excellence is not a pursuit of perfection, but it's a posture of the heart. And so it really is, as you just said, that extension of the heart that we have of worship with the gifts that we are given. And it's just to say, hey, I'm going to give all of me in this moment, whatever the all of me means. It doesn't mean it's perfect. It may have, fails or flaws or imperfections, because if perfect was the measuring stick that God was going to give us for excellence, we wouldn't have ever been created, right? Because we are not perfect beings. So
Totally.
I love that. Jon, what a great conversation. I wish we had hours more to dig into this. I want to help our community connect with you. What is the best way that somebody can get in touch with you, connect with you if they want to be a part of your newsletter or coaching or cohorts? How would they reach out?
Totally. Probably the two best channels would be Instagram. Just find me on, my handle. It's Jon M. Thurlow on Instagram, or just go to the website, jonthurlow.com. Those are the two easiest ways.
And is the coaching I know you do these Zooms and newsletter. All that is all going to be a part of that.
Yeah. Yep. It'll be easy to see. Yeah.
I love it. Jon, thank you so much for taking some time with us and being a part of this podcast.
Thanks so much, Luke. Great to be with you.
What an encouraging and fun word from Jon. We're so glad that he joined us for an interview for the podcast, that he could speak to all of you guys on our Monochrome Podcast listener group. Now, we want to dive into one of our favorite parts of the podcast, which is the Creative Challenge.
Y'all, I love the Creative Challenge. It is my favorite. This one is to throw out monochrome for a day or two. Not us. Don't throw us out. We love you. Keep listening. But if you are, in the tech space, especially media team, videographer, photographer, you wear a lot of black. Hence one of the reasons we named this the Monochrome Podcast. But I want to encourage you, challenge you rather, to throw out your monochrome outfit for the day. Hear me out. There's something called dopamine dressing, which is what I do on the regular. If you guys could see us, I intentionally chose my outfit today because I love camo, and I'm wearing a camo hat. I'm wearing a shirt with a bright yellow dog on it, and it brings me a lot of joy. And so dopamine dressing is dressing in bright colors in clothing that has sentimental value, because in a study published by the University of Hertfordshire, which I'm probably saying that wrong, they said that there's a strong link between clothing and mood. So my challenge to you is try it out for a day or two. Wear a bright colored hat, shoes. I know we love sneakers in this group. A shirt, a jacket, anything that sparks joy, and see how that affects your creativity, see how it affects your mood, and then tell us about it. If you want to take a little OOTD photo and tag us in it, we would love to see it.
Yes.
Listen, I'll gas you up if you tag.
Awesome.
Yes. But tag us in the Salt Creative Challenge, because I want to see your outfits, because I love it.
I have a feeling some people are going to have to go shopping to do this challenge. Mm-hmm. Some of our listeners are like, I got to run to Target, or I got to run to the mall real quick.
I think it's going to push them out of their comfort zone to do an ooh-ta-da post.
What is ooh-ta-da?
That's how you say it, ooh-ta-da.
Oh, you're right. I saw it, but I was like, ooh-ta-da, yeah.
Well, if you have to go shopping or need help with your ooh-ta-da, DM me, DM Salt. I will gas you up. It will make you look so cute in your dopamine outfit.
I know our office is very often a sea of black. So yeah, I think this is a great challenge for our team, for our whole office. However, we do have one person who visits the office every once in a while who I don't think ever wears black. He's always wearing a good color, which just is great. He's the fresh color that walks in the office. But Phil Bottle, guys, you have probably seen him at SALT. You might recognize his name. He has spoken a few times at conference. But our next Monochrome Podcast episode is with Phil Bottle. He is talking to us a little about leadership, and it is just so full of wisdom and practical things that you can do with your team. Please join us for episode 15 next week as we talk to him about that. In the meantime, though, thank you for joining us. We cannot wait to see your colorful outfits posted. Get that big rush of dopamine. Go buy that cool, dumb camera that's actually super amazing. And we'll see you at the next episode.